Hello once again, skaters of all types, skill levels, and everything in between. Back to the Skateboarding Made. It's me. Sorry that this took a little bit longer than I anticipated. I have transitioned recently from using Adobe to using Final Cut Pro, so it was just a little bit of a transition there. And that being said, there's a bit of a new format I'm trying. I'm going to go ahead and explain it a bit, but if you don't really care to hear about that, I just want to jump into the video, you can just follow the time code right here. Just go to that spot and you'll be good. But if you care to stick around for a little bit, I'll explain. I do want to try to do a little bit of things because a lot of times when I'm like skating or if I'm trying to explain something, it can be pretty annoying with both traffic and just having to take a pause from the session to try and commentate and talk about what's going on. So what I'm going to be doing instead is introducing a bit of a voiceover mascot so that I can have someone that can voice over things for me in the meantime. I can focus on the skating and then just deal with that after the fact. And that is going to be Paige right here, who is the Skateboarding Maid. You'll see him a lot more in videos. Bear with me as I figure out kind of how to do this. But that being said, this video is going to be kind of the introductory for him. He's going to be all throughout this, and you can kind of see what to expect. This may change a little bit as I kind of figure out how I want to make this. But that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the video. So, you're going to want to start by taking off the grip tape off of your skateboard. It helps to weigh it down, and regardless of what you're doing or how big of a piece, it helps a lot to use a heat gun. I didn't use one here because I guess I just wasn't really thinking, but it definitely helps a lot. But when you get it all cleaned up, what you're going to go ahead and do is take it over to the table saw and cut strips appropriate for the size for what you're doing. Since I was making, necklaces out of bearings, what I wanted to do was make pieces just a little bit smaller than the width of the bearing. Now, do be careful if you're making smaller pieces, because they can fly at you, kind of like that, and that is terrifying. So, take precautions, use a pushing stick if you have one, and you'll end up with strips kind of like this, maybe bigger, maybe smaller, but after that, you're going to go ahead and take a pot, fill it with a little bit of water, not too much, maybe an inch or two, because what we're going to actually go ahead and do here is steam the skateboard pieces so that they're easier to bend. And so just put it on your stove and grab one of those little vegetable steamers, get it boiling, and then you're just going to go ahead and lower your anarchy symbol. You're going to go ahead and lower your skateboard strips into the pot and just go ahead and let them boil. I did it for about 20 to 30 minutes. It may vary just, depending on how many pieces you have and how thick they are, things like that. But when it's all ready, just go ahead and take them out and be gentle. The water's hot and sometimes the stick can be hot. And then just go ahead and get ready for the next step. Now, these are some pieces that I did beforehand, trying to boil them instead of steam them. That was the wrong way to do it, and also the glue I just showed was the wrong glue. I prefer a Gorilla Glue instead, but make sure you sand the tops and bottoms of them, and then just apply glue only to the tops of the strips. Just kind of, spread it on there nice and evenly, and then you're just going to go ahead and clamp it together. Now, I like to use the clamps that have the screw bottom because I find that those kind of help hold the pieces a lot more uniformly. It just makes it easier to kind of add tension onto them. You can use like the handle squeeze ones, and I do use one on the side, but I do prefer to use the squeeze top one, so I would recommend using those if you do have them. They're not too expensive, and I think they work better. But just go ahead and clamp that, let that glue cure about a day or so, and then you should just have a nice little strip that you can use right there. You can use this in a lot of things, but of course what I'm going to show you for is the necklace. So that's a nice little strip. It should look better than mine, but that's it. We're going to start by prepping this bearing for the necklace. So just pop off the shield, and then there is that backing that you have to pop off as well. And I did that by virtue of a screwdriver. You can just kind of poke it through right there. You can kind of see me doing that there. And it should just come right out. This next part is a little bit weird to explain, but I will do my best. So it's kind of hard to get the bearing into the pieces. So what I like to do is put all the balls into the bottom half, and that kind of makes the middle half rotate just a little bit easier. So what I did was wedge a screwdriver and just kind of try and push the ball bearing out, just rotating kind of on the middle axis. This does require a little bit of luck, a little bit of elbow grease. Sometimes you can get it to where it just kind of falls apart. You can actually see here that I kind of got it to where it just kind of would just disassemble itself. It's a little bit off screen, but there it went right there. But if it doesn't work quite like that, what you can do is just kind of push it out and then rotate it, and it should kind of, get the balls off track, and then it should disassemble. But when you got your pieces, you're gonna move on to the next step. So after that's ready, you can go ahead and just drill out the central hole for the middle of the bearing. Just drill it wherever you think there's a lot of good color and contrast. I did it between two pieces where I got a little bit of the orange in my old board and some of that green in the new board that I had gotten. But just drill it wherever seems right. Then you're gonna want to drill it just big enough that the center bearing can kind of fit snugly in. You can see me test fit it here in a little bit. I'm just kind of cleaning off the hole, then just going to make sure it fits nicely, so you can kind of see the colors right there. But you just want it to fit fairly snugly a little bit. It doesn't have to be too tight, it just kind of plops right in there. And actually now we kind of need to talk about some things. So as you may not know, this actually is the wrong thing to do. You do not want to glue the bearing in before you finish this, because you see the central bearing and the outer bearing are going to be slightly raised to kind of help glue pool and protect the actual necklace. And if you're sanding down in the wood with the central bearing inside, that's going to mess it up. So do as I say and not as I do. Don't glue the bearing in. But back to the video. So after you get that all prepped and you do not glue the bearings into the wood, we can move on to the next step. And so after that, you're going to go ahead and cut out the actual outlet for the circle. It doesn't have to be right. I used a hole saw to kind of make a plug here, but you could just use a bandsaw or even a jeweler saw. This is the plug I made. It's kind of rough and it is much bigger, and that's just because we're just going to sand it down to the shape. And the way that I did this at first was I tried using a drill, a bolt that was about the same diameter as the bearing, and just some sandpaper. And that actually worked pretty good. Full disclosure though, I do have a belt sander that I used, but for the sake of keeping this video showing that you can do this with basic tools, I just did this with example using the drill and some sandpaper. But you can just go ahead and by just getting your kind of little jig there, just tightened up, get everything just, so it's not going to slide around, and just chuck it up in the drill, and you can just kind of start using some sandpaper to smooth it out and round it out. Now, just do be aware that when you start doing this, as you can see I'm doing here, it does do a great job of making everything smooth and round, but it may be a little bit oval shaped, and you may have to manually shape some parts using some sandpaper just by hand, just to kind of even everything out. But when you get it all shaped and it's good to go, it's gonna look pretty much like this. It should just about roughly fit into the bearing. It may be pretty tight. I actually ended up having to use a little bit of a screwdriver and a hammer to kind of just knock it in there because it was a really tight fit. But just, use a little bit of elbow grease, a little bit of persistence, and you'll get that thing in the bearing in no time flat. I just used a cloth kind of to wrap it just to make sure it wouldn't really get damaged or scuffed, but you just kind of knock it in there. And then when you're satisfied with the fit, then you're all done at this step. And there you can see it's laid in there pretty flush, and so we can go on to the last step. The last step is finishing it. I like to use tung oil because I think it really makes the colors and grain pop. So just go ahead and get a little bit on a rag. You don't need a lot, just a little touch will do. And just kind of apply it to the top and bottom. You can usually let this dry for about an hour, then do a light sanding between coats to add a few extra coats for a little bit extra protection. But after you get it applied, I'll kind of show you right here. It really does make the colors and grain pop. I love the way these look. But just go ahead and apply a little bit there. And then I am going to finish it off with a little bit of super glue just to kind of seal everything together, kind of make it last a little bit longer. And this is where that step I came in before said, because you do want the glue to kind of lay between the two quote-unquote walls of the bearing. But just go ahead and do that. And then I spritzed a little bit of accelerator just to kind of make it dry faster. You may want to finish this off with a little bit of a polishing depending on if the glue dries foggy or if you need to sand it. But that aside, this necklace is actually done and ready to go. Now this is the one I finished. It looks kind of burnt, and that's because of the issue with the bearing. I ended up sanding it down with the belt sander and it burned it. But this is the first one I actually made a few years back, and it actually turned out really good. I know it needs a bit of a polishing, but I'm actually still pretty proud of it. And along with that, there was this little ring I made right here. Kind of similar process, just obviously just drilled it out a lot bigger. It was a pretty big pain to do using just a drill and some sandpaper, but you can get it down with enough persistence. Another thing I did was make this little pocket knife. This was actually just, I made a sheet and then sanded that flat and then drilled out some holes for the rivets and just finished it there. But it's just another example of something you can make. But I just want to show there's a lot of different kind of options you can make here and just share a few kind of projects I did. And that being said, I hope you guys get inspired to make a few things. If you do make anything, please do share it. I would love to see anything you guys make. But that's about it for me. I'll go ahead and hand it back over to Lance now. Thank you guys so much for bearing with me. Pun intended. And so thanks for bearing with me on that. Again, pun intended. But I hope you guys are liking the new format. I had a lot of fun making it. It's a lot different from what I usually do, so I'm kind of learning as I go. But we'll see. I'm not going to phase myself out entirely, obviously. This is still going to be very much a me channel. I just want to add a little bit of my own kind of, my own little unique thing to it. Just kind of set myself apart a little bit. So I'm having a lot of fun with it. Hope you guys enjoy it too. That being said, even though this is my own channel, I do what I want. It is still a bit of a skateboarding channel. So here's a few skateboarding clips. Go ahead and get those pulled off real quick here. But that was just a fun little freestyle on for messing around with. I'm going to be trying freestyle a little bit more. Depending on when the next videos come out, you might notice a different board here and there, because I just recently got one of the Huntington spoon nose ones from Waltz. I'll leave a link to their website in the description too if you want to check them out, because I am trying to focus a lot more on freestyle. I'm not going to be talking about the board in detail just yet, because that one is one that I want to ride for a good while, then give a review on, kind of talk about that. I might try to change up my board a little bit too, to have some inset wheels, or I'm sorry, not inset, offset wheels. So just to kind of see, I'll talk about that later too if I can. But that being said, that's about it for this one. I may try to make a little shop. If you guys are interested, I might try to sell some of, the kind of stuff made, necklaces, the rings. I mean, even if I can manage to do knives, I don't really know how the kind of selling and shipping of that works. But if that's something I can figure out, if it interests you, let me know. I can try and make an Etsy shop, or maybe some other kind of shop online, make a little website or something. Who knows? But let me know. And, let me know how the format is, if you have any suggestions for it. If you're liking it, please let me know. I'd love to hear back from you guys. But that said, whether it's a good day or a good night, toodle pip. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.